Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss our favorite memories with the PlayStation, or just our memories in general with the PlayStation. I was looking through my videos and I realized I knew there were a couple of consoles that I hadn't talked about. I still don't think I did anything for a specific handheld episode, so I haven't really done that as far as Game Boy and Advance and everything. But I realized I haven't done the PlayStation. I did the PS2, which I think came up because it was during that time where they're like, oh yeah, they found all these extra PlayStations, and I think that's why I ended up doing that video, because it just popped in my head. But I haven't done these in quite a minute, and it was like, oh, I kind of left out a big chunk of consoles. Like, I still have the PlayStation 1. I can still do 3 and 4, as far as memories, even though, obviously 4 is more recent, but each console has its own memories, its own games and stuff like that. And of course, having done the PlayStation 2, it just made sense for me to just take a step back and go with the PlayStation 1. And I'm sure I'll have time, because right now it is snowing in Michigan. Let me tell you, it has been snowing all day. I just left work, I just got on the freeway, and I'm like, this might not be a long one. I might have enough time to get 2 episodes in, because if you're not from Michigan, you don't know how it is, but the instant the snow comes back, because we've had it good for a couple of days, it's really been like warm, which is super weird, like no snow or anything. It's been like more like fall, and then bam, here we go again. So we'll see what happens. We'll see, how much time I get, but here we go, PlayStation 1. So of course, the PlayStation 1, and of course I have to do this. If you aren't familiar with the series, I will always talk Resident Evil. I will find a way to reference it, whether it's actually involved, or if I can just find a nice little tangent, I'll get to Resident Evil somehow. Especially with RE9 coming up, it's in my head like every single second of the day. But Resident Evil did start on the PlayStation 1. So of course, one of my greatest memories is experiencing Resident Evil for the first time, and just having my favorite franchise come into existence and experiencing that as a kid. I played through Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. And I played Survivor. I did not like it, but I remember playing that. And, like a lot of people, it's like, this isn't like Resident Evil. This is horrible. My cousin had it, and I was like, holy crap, he has the new Resident Evil. And I was hyped. I put it in. I was by myself. I got to play it, and I was like, it's first person? Like, you walk around and shoot? I'm done. And I turned it off, and I never looked back. But good memories. Resident Evil 1, director's cut, the good director's cut. I do have to specify that for the Resident Evil fans out there. I had the good director's cut, so I had the good basement music. Then of course Resident Evil 2, and then Resident Evil 3, which became my favorite Resident Evil game. So I've referenced these stories a lot, so I won't like super deep dive into them. But of course, for those of you that might be hearing this for the first time versus the million times I've talked about Resident Evil, I was like 5-6 years old playing the director's cut. Loved that game, had a fantastic time with it, and I just played the crap out of it. Like, it introduced me, well, I shouldn't say it really introduced me to horror, but it was definitely my biggest connection to it outside of, movies on TV, or, the random horror movies that I might see here and there. But when it came to horror, it was mostly Resident Evil. That was the thing that was just at home. I could just turn it on whenever I wanted, and so I played Resident Evil. I was an idiot because I was like 5 years old, so it was a little tough. Like, I couldn't figure out some puzzles because my brain hadn't developed to understand puzzles at that moment. Like, it was a little tough back then. So there was a giant chunk of time where I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with this game. I can't beat this. And this will come up in another video that I'm actually gonna redo it. But it was a defining moment in my life, was playing Resident Evil. And eventually I ended up taking over my older cousin's save, and he'd gotten past the part that I was stuck at, which I do believe was the clock puzzle. I couldn't comprehend that as a kid. That confused me for a long time after that. I would forget over and over again. Every time I play it, I'd be like, what was the answer to this puzzle? Like, that was the one that always messed me up in the first game, was that clock puzzle in the dining room where you have to look at the picture. That like destroyed my brain so often, where I was just like, I don't know how to do this puzzle. I don't know how to effing do this. So took over my cousin's save, and he was towards the end of the game. I think he was actually in like the facility portion. It just skipped over all the other stuff. And I was just like, okay, I'll just beat it from here. And then I beat it, and I was like, that was unsatisfying. I didn't really do it myself. And that kind of kick-started that journey of like me wanting to actually accomplish things, of my own accord and doing it myself. And so eventually I started to figure it out. I found my way through beating the game, had a good time with it. Never beat it super fast or anything like that. I've mentioned this before, I think, with unlockables and other things I've referenced as far as like things from Resident Evil. I had no clue that it was like, hey, beat it out with a certain speed and all that stuff. I didn't know any of that. I was like 6 years old. I didn't even know about gaming magazines at that time. So Resident Evil 1, didn't really understand any of that. Unlocked the costumes, because that's just to beat the game once you get some costume stuff. And I would just play around in it all the time, play a range mode, change Jill into like that really weird costume she had that I always thought was like bright yellow. I was like, it looks so weird. It's so drastically different. But pick it every once in a while and just play around with the game and play the crap out of that Resident Evil 2 demo over and over and over again. And because I played that demo so much, I always had the memory of the fact that the demo, and I've definitely mentioned this, it hasn't been, well, I was gonna say since last year's January, but it's been a long time. It's been a while since I've referenced this. But playing RE2, specifically playing the demo, as much as I did before finally getting that game, like, I didn't understand the concept of like an alpha or a beta or a concept version of a game where it's like, hey, here's the game, but when it comes out, it might look a little bit different or something might change. I didn't know that that was a thing back in the day. I was like, by the time that came out, probably 7 years old. So I had no concept of what was about to happen when I first played Resident Evil 2 for real. Because in the demo, for those of you who might be unfamiliar, you can look this up on YouTube, by the way, if you guys ever want to see this, but one of my favorite random little things about Resident Evil 2 is that the demo that comes out with, or that came out, I should say, with the director's cut, has changes to the gameplay, or just the game in general, I should say. It has changes to the game compared to the official release when you actually get it. And one of the biggest things was towards the end, but there's, I think, like 2 other ones. One is that the alleyway is not blocked off. So that little van that you go to and then the zombies like bust out of the basketball court, that does not happen in the demo. You actually just run straight down the alleyway and it actually takes you directly to where the bus is. So if you ever played the game, just know that there's like an alleyway that's like right off screen because of course, fixed camera angles. So you never really see it because of the way they designed it. When you go down the alley, even in the demo, once you come out to where the bus is, it's the same camera angle as if you came around the side, where you can get over the trash cans and everything. So the camera angle is exactly the same. So you'd never know if you just didn't know this about the demo. But that little van isn't there. I always called it like the U-Haul van because it was like a white van. I always thought that as a kid. But that van isn't there and you can just walk straight down the alley. And of course, when I first played the game, I'm sure I had that reaction like, there's a van here, that's different. I didn't remember that part affecting me as much. But the thing that really got me was the fact that at the end of the demo, you end in the STARS office. So you go past where the liquor is, which is not, they don't do the cutscene in the demo, it kind of just drops down. And then you do that, you go past it, and you get to the STARS office. Instead of running into Claire, you actually run into Ada. And what they did in the demo was the scene where you originally meet Ada, or in the actual release of the game where of course you're in the parking lot, they took that cutscene and they just put it into the STARS office. So you actually get the scene where like, it pans up from her feet to her face and then it kind of fades to black before you actually get to see what she looks like. And I thought that was the game forever because I did that for like an entire effing year before the game officially came out. And then I play the game and I'm like, oh, where's the cutscene? And so I just walked towards the door and then Claire comes in. I was like, this is not supposed to happen. And that stuck with me forever, where I was like, I played this 100 million times. And then when I finally got the game, I've been waiting for an eternity. Like, who's this woman? What's gonna happen? I don't know this lady, the lady in the red dress. Who is this lady? And then I still had to wait because I was like, that is not what happened in the demo. I have been waiting for this woman to show up for a year. And I still, you still have to go further in the game. And that was like a crazy twist in my life where I just never forgot that. Like, it's one of those random things that I think about. Like, a lot of people probably won't have that memory, which is why I like talking about it, because it's just one of those random little fun facts that could easily be lost to time if you never, there are people that experienced it, but if you don't know that, then you just don't know. It's just like, yeah, I played RE2, but those are like the little bits of media that we have where it's like, hey, we got to make sure that stays in there. And it's on YouTube. Like I said, you can watch the actual director's cut demo version of the game. Somebody did like a full playthrough of it. So highly recommend checking that out, just for, if you're as nerdy as I am. It's just one of those cool little things where you're like, oh, they changed this around, and you can actually see the things that they moved around from the demo. So highly recommend doing that, because like I said, it's just on YouTube. You can shoot through it. I think it's only, maybe like a 10-15 minute demo if you're really just running through it. But that always stuck with me as a kid, where I thought I knew, and it's just the beginning of the game. And that's why I'm like, you wouldn't expect any changes. And that was a huge thing, a literal, totally different character. And also, because they used the cutscene from the parking lot, you actually get like a very rare angle of the star's office, because you see it just like it does in the parking lot where it pans from her feet up. It still shows like that specific camera angle. It's just in the star's office. So you get to see it from a different perspective. It's not like it's drastically different, but it's just like you don't get that camera angle in the main game where you're in the star's office and then they do like a panning down up. So it's something that literally only happens in that demo because they just threw Ada in there as the way to, in the demo out. So that was always something else too, where it's like you get a unique angle of the star's office when you're inside it compared to, just the normal camera angles that you get from the actual release. So that always stuck with me as a crazy thing where it was like, holy crap, they changed it. That's crazy to me. So that happened to me as a kid, and it really it shook me a little bit, like in a positive way. It was just like, holy crap, they can do that. So that was very interesting back in the day. And then of course, playing through RE2 a million times, once again, not being good enough to beat the game in like 5 hours or do it with a couple saves, because I didn't know I had to in order to unlock anything. So I was just playing the game, playing Resident Evil, having a fantastic time. Eventually RE3 comes out, and that became my favorite one. RE3 is my favorite Resident Evil. I love the crap out of that game. And I played it, and then I still to this day believe my cousin stole it. And I say that because they tried to steal my Resident Evil 1 game. They didn't even take the whole case. They disrespected it. They took the disc. And the only reason I ever found it is because I just happened to go over their house one day, and I just looked, and I was like, my thing is just there, just the disc, and it was sitting in a little rack, and it had something on it. I took that, and it was good. But Resident Evil 3 just lost it, up and disappeared. My favorite Resident Evil, and I never had it. So that really hurt as a kid. And as a young kid, I had the strategy guide for Resident Evil 3. So that's something that I need to get back, because I'm, of course, one of those things, you just lose stuff over time. So I want to buy that again to have it back, because that was the first game I ever had a strategy guide for. And I think it was really the only one. I had that and Dino Crisis, which I got Resident Evil and Dino Crisis the same year on Christmas. And I got like a giant stack of games. Those are the only two I remember. I think I might have got Crash Bandicoot Warped. I know I talked about this before, in Christmas, nerdy Christmas memories. But that was a big year, because it was like, holy crap, I got Resident Evil and I got Dino Crisis. Beautiful time, beautiful time. But of course, other memories, not to make this all Resident Evil based, there was a ton of great stuff when it comes to PlayStation 1. I have huge memories. I'm definitely a fighting game fan, so for me, Tekken is my number one. That was always my number one growing up. It's my number one even now. As much as I love Mortal Kombat, and admittedly Mortal Kombat is way more consistent, so they were churning out games like crazy, and Tekken, it seems slower and slower each time. Like, who knows when Tekken 9 is going to end up coming out. But I had my couple of fighting games back in the day. Like I said, I had Tekken 1, never had Tekken 2, but I had Tekken 3. And you know what it is. Tekken 3 was just where it was at. That was like the game of fighting games. Something happened when that came out, and it was just different. It was like, yeah, Mortal Kombat has violence, that's cool. Do a cool fatality, and they blow up, and there's like 18 rib cages. That's neat, that's great. Although I did have Mortal Kombat Trilogy. That was like the best thing in the universe, where it was like that and what I have, Street Fighter Alpha 3, I think. Both those games were some of the best ever, because it was just like, here's just the giant collection of stuff. Trilogy was all the Mortal Kombat games, and Alpha 3 was just like, here's like everybody we've had in the Alpha series. Here you go. Just like a billion characters in each game. I love both those games because they had so many characters. It's in that same bracket of like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where you're just like, oh, there's just options. You just love it. And just, man, I wish we could go back to that, where games just come out and it's like, here you go, 80 effing characters, and it's just ridiculous. Dragon Ball Z did do that. Sparking Zero, I know that game came out and people ended up hating it. Very unfortunate. So at some point I'll get that. But when that came out, and it was like, look at all these effing characters. And I know, admittedly, it's like 18 Gokus and Vegetas a piece, but still, a lot of characters to start. It's like, we just don't get that like we used to. So that was super fun. But Tekken 1, I love the crap out of Tekken 1. To the point that I currently have the vinyl record for the first game. I was like, I at least have to have the very first one. So I got the soundtrack to Tekken 1 on vinyl, and I love playing that. That also is the reason I love Galaga so much, because for those of you unaware, Namco, which is now like Namco Bandai or Bandai Namco, they've switched it back and forth a million times it seems, but they make not only Tekken, but they're like the publishing company of Galaga. So they always had that little demo. Every time you start up Tekken 1, you get like a little Galaga demo, and it would go through like the first 3 or 4 stages, it would go up to the challenge stage, and then that was like the last one. And I would play it every time. Like, you could skip it. I played it like every single time, and that's why I became so good at Galaga, and it became my favorite arcade game. Though shout out to Miss Pac-Man too, that's my number 2. But love me some Galaga. So that was always like the number one thing. Is like, oh, I'm gonna play Tekken. Let me get my little bit of Galaga in, my couple of levels. Got to the point where I was like just mastering the challenge level, and always had a great time with that. And, you know, of course, playing through the game, that was always fun. And then always wanted Tekken 2. I played it, because, you know, cousins that had it and stuff. So I played it a little bit, but never owned it myself. So I didn't really understand that much of the story, even though, you know, back in the day, it was kind of hard to understand the stories anyway. It's just like, okay, so he threw him off a cliff, and then these people do this. I understand Nina and her sisters. I got that part, at the very least. Jack's a robot. But going through, and then, like I said, not having to get in Tekken 3, and just the amazing amount of time that I spent on Tekken 3, unlocking Tiger, doing the Tekken Bowl. You know, that was the first time that came into play, and that was super awesome. The side-scrolling thing, chicken. Like, I still say that to this day. But all that stuff, love Tekken, love the crap out of Tekken 3. It was so fun. Loved all those characters, and just that was just where it was at. And, you know, I'd play with my dad. I'll never forget the time I was playing, because of course, when you have the game, you're probably better than your cousins when they come over. Younger cousin came over, I was decimating him, you know, it wasn't working. My dad took over, and he freaking picked Tiger, and I was so pissed. I was like, man. Like, and he was just killing me, because it was just one of those things. Like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the footage. Somebody did a bot of Eddie on like Tekken, I think it was on Tekken 8, and it was literally just an automated thing that only pressed square, and it went up to like the top ranks, because it was destroying everybody, and it was just press square for Eddie. And that's how it is sometimes, unfortunately. And that's really what happened, and it sucked, and he destroyed me, and so I was just like, oh, this sucks, this hurts, this hurts. And also there was the time he made me cry, because he beat me in Tekken so many times. I cried. I didn't win a single round. I think he beat me like 8 times straight, and I cried. I straight up cried. I mentioned that in some other video like months and months ago, but my dad made me cry. He beat me so hard in Tekken 3. I cried. I put the controller down, and I cried all the way down the hallway, and all the way down the stairs, all the way down the hallway on the main floor. And I walked past my mom, and she was like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I lost in Tekken." And she's like, "Boy, if you don't," you know, the usual things. It's like, why are you crying over a game? But you know, that's all I had. You know, who knows? I don't remember how old I was when Tekken 3 came out, but it was like, this is my thing, and I have nothing. What am I if I'm to lose 8 times in a row? I can do that easily now, though. If I go online, that'll happen all day long. I played Tekken 7 just to play, and I haven't played literally in like a straight year. I was like, I'm gonna get destroyed, but I just want to play. I just want to play against actual people. I won some like matches, but I did not win. I won some rounds, I guess, but I didn't win any matches. But that's what I expected, but I was getting destroyed. Effing Negan, oh my God, I hate that dude. But love me some Tekken. To this day, Tekken is still like my number 1, but Tekken 3, of course, where it was at. And I, like I said, still love my really early PS1, Tekken 1. Like, those graphics I think about a lot. It's like, man. And then they look so much better when you go to, you know, up to Tekken 3. Like, it's a huge difference just within that console. But outside of the fighting games, the usual stuff, you know, the Resident Evils and things like that, there's one game that has always been a huge part of my life, especially when I was a kid actually playing it. And that was the Namco Museum games. I loved that game back in the day. Like, it was so cool. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, there was a series of them, and they spelled out Namco, so it was MCO. So there were 5 games. Sorry about that. I had to actually spell it out for myself. But there were 5 games, and they were all collection games. So it was the Namco Museum, and I would assume volume 1 through 5. I think I had the first volume because it had just classic Pac-Man on it and not like Miss Pac-Man. But that game was super fun, and you would turn on the game, and it was super unique. It was definitely the first time I ever experienced anything like that. You can play tons of games now where you start off the game and then you walk around an area, but it was so interesting because you start off in first person, and it's like you're playing a nameless nobody. There's no story or anything, but it's like you start as this person that walks into a museum, and you can just walk around. And you walk to all these different sections, and each section is a different classic video game. So you can go off and just walk to the Pac-Man section, and then when you get there, it's a Pac-Man room. So it's like the Pac-Man house, the sky, like each area has like its own like sky and everything. And it was such a cool setup, and of course it played, you know, music from all the different franchises and stuff. And it was so good. I loved that game back in the day. So it had Pac-Man. I think there was a game called like Toy Pop or something. That was one of the few multiplayer games. Loved that game too. That was a really unique one. I don't know if that, I wonder if that's on the collection. I haven't thought of that game in forever, but that I could actually play with my cousin. So like if somebody came over and wanted to play, we could play that. And it had like a bunch of levels, and there was like an actual story to that game too. It was like it's two siblings like looking for each other or something like that. Or like if you did co-op, they were looking for somebody else, or they would like slightly change the story. They were just looking, trying to go up this tower or whatever to get a family member. And you would just play through, and it was super fun. And you would like pick up all these different power-ups, and it was, man, I wish I could explain. It's almost hard to remember exactly how that game played out, but I always remember it being really good. So look up Toy Pop if you can. But they had that. Pole Position, super cool, love that game. There was some other game where you play a race car, Rally X, that's what it was. I was trying to remember because all I could think of, you drop like the little smoke bombs, but I always thought they looked like popcorn. Dig Dug was in there, love Dig Dug, so Dig Dug is great. Bosconian, great game, phenomenal music. I have that song that plays in that room when you go to that game. I have that on my phone because I love that theme so much. I would just stand in the room and listen to the music and just listen to it repeat. And that was super cool because it was almost like going to a laser tag room. Like the whole room was dark and it had stars everywhere. And the table was one of the, like the flat sit down ones. And not all of them were like that. I know that one was, I think the Pac-Man one was. Some of the others were like regular arcade, like stand-up arcades. And then quite a few of them were like the sit down thing, which was also rare at the time. I didn't see that too often. So that was always kind of cool in the game too. Because it was like, especially in real life, I feel like I've rarely come across the tabletop ones where you sit down and look at the screen. I always thought those were super rare compared to the, the classic stand-up ones. So always loved the Namco Museum game. Always got to have some fun. Of course, Galaga was also in there. And I think they also had, Galaga, or no, I think the one I had Galaxian. It was before they had Galaga. I think the other one that has Miss Pac-Man had Galaga, which is devastating. But it had Galaxian, I think, in mind, which I hate. Which came out before Galaga. I recently found that out. I always thought that was the ripoff of Galaga, but Galaga was the one that came after Galaxian. Yeah, I hate Galaxian. Excuse me, I can't stand it. Like, you can feel the difference of like, you can shoot through, I feel like you shoot through the aliens so often in that one, it would just piss me off. And I was like, I don't like it. The ship looks like garbage compared to the Galaga ship, which I always thought looked so cool. And then you go to like the Galaxian one, it's like, that look like some Dupo blocks. So, it always upset me a little. I was like, man, I wish I had Galaga on here. But I had Pole Position, which was awesome. I had Rally X, I had Dig Dug, I had Pac-Man. It was a great game, and I always loved just starting it up, and it was just like, you just walk through a museum and you pick where you want to go, and it just always felt super cool. So that's definitely a memory. I wish I still had that game, just as like a thing to have, just like having most PlayStation games. I just wish I had a lot of my older stuff. Although I do have my Resident Evil 1. I have Resident Evil 1. I have the discs for Resident Evil 2, and like I said, Resident Evil 3 is just mystery for that one. But another game that I still have to this day, one of my favorites. At the time, it was my second favorite franchise. Admittedly, I don't think that's where it will land anymore as much. I still love the franchise 100%, but Metal Gear Solid back in the day was so fun. I played through that game a million times, just like Resident Evil and 1, 2, and 3, just played through it a bunch because I just loved Metal Gear. It was super fun, played the crap out of that game, and then I got Metal Gear VR Missions, and that was also super fun. And when I finally unlock the missions to play as Gray Fox, and I was so upset. They give you 3 levels. There's 100 missions in that game, and they give you 3 to play as Gray Fox. And I was like, man, that is harsh. Like, they give you 3 levels, but I can tell you I replayed those levels so effing much because I got to run around as the ninja from Metal Gear. That was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And they give you the tiniest health bar too, which always sucked, because it was literally just to cut like some bamboo stalks where it's just, you just use your katana to just cut them. And I think that was always the mission, was like to survive, and then you cut the stalks. I think one of them was that, and the other might have been to take out a certain amount of enemies, and then the other might have been a combination of the two. It's been 100 million years. But I would play those so much, and then you would just go around and you could like deflect the bullets, and you could do like the crazy thing where he has like the shield from his actual, like all the things he does in his boss battle, you could do, except for like jump over people. I don't remember if you could do that, but you could stealth kill people, you could block the bullets, you could do the crazy force field thing, and you have the tiniest little bit of life. If you did the force field thing, I remember that would drain your life, but it was such a cool move. It was like, man, I wish his health bar was longer because I just want to do this. But that's always one of them. Like, that game was so fun, and all the silly stuff you do that, they would have all these like stealth missions where you have to figure out like what's the thing that's missing. I really loved that back in the day, where it was like it would just be like one room, and you just had to figure out who killed this guy and how did they do it. I love those missions back in the day because it was a real puzzle mission where you're just in one room and it's like all the answers are right around you. It's like a whole library on one side of the room. There's like the fireplace, and you just figure out how did this person die and how did the person get out of the room. Super fun. It was like a, mystery escape room type of thing. I loved those when I was younger. Like that was always super fun. But Metal Gear Solid, of course, a classic PlayStation game, and had a fantastic time with it, as well as Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. I feel like I almost have to reference them together, even though different companies and stuff, but they've had their connection ever since, the olden days. They're much more separated now, when Spyro went off to magically show up in Skylanders, and then eventually, now we have the Crash remakes, which at some point I definitely plan on getting, because they always have that bundle on sale where it's the 3 remakes and 4, and they have the remake of Crash Team Racing. So at some point I'm gonna get that. It's 5 effing games in one, and I would love to go back and replay the old Crash Bandicoot games. But I love the Spyro games. I think Spyro, I only had the first one. I always wanted the other Spyro games, especially, I think the second one was where they added other characters. I wanted that so bad as a kid. I was like, you get to play as multiple characters. And eventually I played it. I never owned it, but I did play it and it was super cool. But Spyro and Crash 2, because I had 2 and then eventually I got 3, which I believe I got during the Resident Evil 3 Dino Crisis Christmas. And Crash 2, I think might be the very first game I ever beat 100%. And I did that one by myself. And then Spyro, I ended up doing 100%. And that I did with my cousin. And sometimes like she would end up playing and I would, I would play, it was my game, I would play mostly. But when she would come over, she would end up playing it and stuff. And we would get to like the crazy secret levels where you go up and you're just on like this platform, and it was just crazy. So Spyro and Crash Bandicoot 2 are like the first 2 games I ever did like 100% of the stuff in. And that was always really cool. So I always think of that as like, those are the first times I was just like super hardcore where I did everything. And of course, unlike Metal Gear and Resident Evil, I didn't need a strategy guide to realize like, hey, if you beat it within a certain amount of time, you get this. And for Metal Gear, I think I got everything in Metal Gear. I probably shouldn't say that. Metal Gear always has a billion things. But I did get the camouflage, because I think that's how I ended up doing it the first time. And then I ended up getting Meryl to live the second time I played it, and then that's how I got the bandana, because I do remember getting both endings, because I remember being like, dang, they killed Meryl. I remember that being like really shocking when I first played that game. That's just the ending I happened to get. So I was playing the way I was playing, and that's just how it ended up going the first time around. But I did end up getting both endings, so I do believe I had the camouflage and the bandana, and I don't know what else you can unlock in the original game, because I don't remember. I think the suit might have been in the original game too. I can't remember that 100%, so I probably didn't get like everything. But I at least got my camouflage. The camouflage was awesome. That was the first game I ever had invisibility, and especially for that game, that was crazy to me. Like, you get camouflage and you can just run around and do stuff. Like, you walk through the puddles and they can't find you. Life-changing experience, honestly. Like, it was like, I can just be invisible. I can just walk around everybody. And it was just like a really interesting change on what that game was. But fantastic time with that unlockable. Fantastic time going through Crash 2. Crash 3, when that came out, was super fun. I don't think I 100%ed that, but I definitely love playing Crash 3. I really enjoyed like Coco's levels where you're running on the Tiger, and the motorcycle level. Replay those 100 million times because they were just different and just, kind of like just speed run challenge levels pretty much. Like, how good can you be? Can you hold down turbo the entire time and actually manage to jump on cue? That's kind of what I did to challenge myself. I would just see if I could just hit the turbo on the Tiger level the entire run through and just make it through. And I think eventually I started to figure it out, and I got like, I think it's the purple gem is the first way you do it, and if you do like the perfect version, I think purple gem is just completing. Silver, I think, is getting all the boxes, or maybe green is getting all the boxes, and then silver is getting like the record time or something like that. I can't remember 100%, but I know I think there were 3. I think they added 3 to each level. Purple and then getting all the boxes was another. And then the time trial would end up having its own as well. So I think I ended up getting all those for the Tiger level, but love me some Crash Bandicoot. Love me some, oh my goodness. I just remember Siphon Filter. I was gonna say love me some Spyro, but Siphon Filter, also really good. Never beat that game. I don't think I ever made it past the first level, but I can tell you, I tased the F out of that dude on the top of that building until he set on fire. That was an amazing experience as a kid, and I never did anything in that game but hit people with a taser until they lit on fire. And it was like, this game is crazy. And I'm sure it got even crazier, but I can tell you I quite literally never experienced anything past that first level. I may have gone to the second, but that's about it. I never beat that game, but I remember playing it a lot and just playing the opening level. I don't remember if that was a weird no memory card era or something weird like that. I don't think that was the case. I think I just never beat the game or never even beat the first level. So I was just tasing people all the time. But core memory, I gotta be honest. Like, once again, first time you ever experience something crazy like that, it's like, I can just tase this dude till he's on fire and then he falls off a building. I'll never forget it. So shout out to Siphon Filter. Also, for anyone that doesn't know this, the team that's been studio, so the team that made Days Gone, they're the ones that made Siphon Filter, like the original one. If you do all of the collectibles in Days Gone, you can unlock the taser as a weapon. And I'm literally like, I missed one of the things. I went to all the locations and somehow I missed one of the things in the game. And I'm like, that effing sucks, but I am not gonna, and I did it because I already went through all of them to try to find it and I couldn't find it. And I was like, I'm not gonna do that twice. So sadly, I literally have one thing missing, so I never got the taser, but I've seen it and it looks pretty neat. But love me some PlayStation, but played Siphon Filter like crazy, like I said. Played Final Fantasy. My uncle had that, played a giant chunk of it, and then I never played it again. I played all the way up to the part where you get surrounded on all four sides. I couldn't beat it, and that was the last time I ever played that game. Never experienced it ever again. One day I will, though. Silent Hill, same thing. Didn't play a ton of it, but I played literally up to the first cutscene of the game, where you go into the diner, and that was when I was skipping cutscenes. I went into the diner, I was like, okay, smoky town is misty, all right. Go to the diner, oh, there's a bunch of people. Skip, I'm not listening to this. Pitch black, everybody left. I was like, oh, I don't know what to do now. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. That was the first time I experienced that. Like, Resident Evil doesn't exactly tell you what to do, but there's a map. You can look at the structure of the building and be like, okay, there's a room here and here and here, and these are stairs. Silent Hill was like, you're the one who's lost, figure it out. And so I gave up. I was like, I don't know what to do. There's a monster just like trapped inside a chain link fence. I don't know what you want from me, so I'm done here. And that was the only time, unfortunately, that I ever played Silent Hill. So that's still one of those big gaming things that's missing from me. But I do believe that's enough for my PlayStation memories. I think that's just about everything as far as like the really big stuff that's ever happened anyway. I did play Time Crisis on PlayStation. That was pretty cool. With the gun con, like my cousin ended up buying that one time. That was pretty awesome. I wish it was Time Crisis 2, but it's still fun to do it with the original Time Crisis and still be able to use the gun. So that was pretty awesome. But love the PlayStation, of course. Great memories with it. Tons of games that I still have to this day. I have like the little, little CD case where I took everything out. So I have a bunch of the games. I still have like Crash Warped. I know I have that. I think I have 2 and 3 actually. I probably still have Spyro. I think I have one of the super old Spec Ops games. Hated that as a kid. I did not comprehend how to play that game in any form or fashion. I was like, this is the most boring game I've ever played because I just could not understand. Like, you just start the game and it was kind of like the Silent Hill version of an army game where it was just like, figure it out. And I'm like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where the enemies are. I don't know what my objective is. It was kind of like you just found the bad guys and had to kill them. But then it was like, where do I go? It's nighttime and I can't really see anything. I could not comprehend that game as a kid, and it would bore the heck out of me. I'm like, how is this a shooter game? This is boring. So, super old Spec Ops game that I could not comprehend. Although, one final memory, Army Men 3D. I loved the crap out of that game. Me and my dad would play Capture the Flag in Army Men 3D all the time. I forgot about that game. That is like a core memory. That's during the era when my dad was still playing games. So we would always do Tekken. Before, if we're going Super Nintendo, we were Turtles in Time and stuff. So we do that, play our fighting games and stuff. And then we would play Army Men 3D all the effing time. And it was always like Capture the Flag because it was so fun. Because it would take forever for one of us to win because we'd always be trying to get there at the last second and try to use our different obviously the different army and they have all their different skills and stuff. And we would always try. And I remember one level specifically was like a camp where it was like tents and stuff. But I think there are multiple levels. I think one of which was an actual house where you are like the actual miniature army men inside of a house. But I always remember like the actual like camp level where you try to go through the tents and stuff. Shout out to Army Men. That was an amazing game. That was a lot of fun back in the day. That was super cool. So that's a good final one to end it on. I know this was a long one. I'm still like not even halfway home, by the way. Snowing like crazy. So I'm gonna end this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe I'll jump right into, PlayStation 3 memories. I don't know. But hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Would love to know your big memories with the very first PlayStation. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.